Okay, so at the end of the last video, I explained to you, after spending a whole bunch of time talking about filibusters, that filibusters don't actually happen. Now, you might be thinking, then why did we spend so much time talking about filibusters if they don't happen? Well, the power to filibuster is something that senators have never wanted to give up. As you can see, filibusters give the minority party and individual senators even a lot of power. Because even if you have less than 40 people opposed to a bill, you can still make everything take a long time and be a nuisance if you oppose a bill. You can force the majority party to invoke closure, and then you still have your 30 hours of debate, so you can still slow things up in the Senate if you want to be a pain in the butt. So senators don't want to give up that power to filibuster. But the idea of bringing the whole place to a screeching halt because 41 people oppose a particular bill doesn't make sense either. So what happened is over time, the Senate developed rules and customs that actually limit filibusters. They're not necessary, and here's why. Remember I told you before, the Senate Majority Leader is the one who controls the agenda. The Senate Majority Leader determines what bills are going to be debated or discussed on which days. And so they go onto this calendar. And so Phil's corn law, I might see, is supposed to be debated on Tuesday. Right now, Monday comes around. I'm all excited. I'm getting ready to go ahead and do it. I come in Tuesday morning, ready to start everything, and I look at the calendar just to double check, and I find my bill has been taken off the calendar. Like, what the hell happened? Well, what a senator can do is they can put a hold on the bill. Now, what is a hold? A hold is basically a threat. It's a threat to filibuster. It's basically a senator's way of saying, if you bring this bill to the floor, I'm going to filibuster it. And since the Senate Majority Leader doesn't want the whole place to come to a screeching halt, he's going to take the bill off the calendar. When I show up and I'm disappointed that I'm not on the calendar anymore, Senate Majority Leader is going to say, hey, look, you know what? Go start negotiating. Right, but I'm not letting you bring this whole place to a screeching halt for days on end or a month because you don't want to negotiate. And so remember that whole process I talked about going to senators, getting them to changing the bill so that you can get enough people to sign on to it till eventually 60 people support the bill and then you can invoke closure. Well, when a senator puts a hold on a bill, it basically forces you to do the same thing, but the Senate keeps on functioning. The Senate keeps on working. So a hold stops the bill from coming to the floor for a vote or even to open up debate. And so that's how holds work. Holds make filibusters unnecessary. Now, there are some people who think that that's not cool, that a senator shouldn't be able to put a hold on a bill. If you want to filibuster a bill, if you want to sit there and talk for hours on end about nonsense, if you want to read the phone book, force people to filibuster. Let the American people see what their senators are doing. They call that a standing filibuster. Require people to get up there and filibuster. That hasn't changed, that hasn't happened yet, and who knows what will happen in the future. Most people don't understand Senate rules or care about Senate rules, and so this may change in the future, but probably not anytime soon. So, filibusters don't actually happen. Senators can issue holds on a bill. A hold is simply a threat to filibuster, and so what it does is when your bill is on the calendar and you're going to debate, you're scheduled to introduce a bill on a certain day, you see that you've been taken off the calendar because somebody has put a hold on your bill. That whole negotiation process that I talked about in the last video, you just start it then. And the Senate continues to work. Now, the practical implication of the filibuster is this, that most major legislation requires 60 votes to pass in the Senate. If you oppose Phil's corn law, you're not going to sign a closure petition that's going to allow debate to end and a vote to happen on the bill. Not a chance. You don't want the bill to pass. You oppose the bill. You're going to use every procedural tool you can. And so a minority of senators can force the majority to negotiate with them by use of holds. So most major legislation requires 60 votes to pass in the United States Senate. And this gives the minority party a lot of power as long as they have 41 members or more. Now there is one exception to this. The one exception to this, and this isn't going to be on the exam, are bills that have to do with the budget, coming up with a budget. There's this whole complicated process called reconciliation. Again, you don't need to know this for the exam, but you may hear about this in the news, so pay attention. The budget rules are set up in such a way that when it comes to passing a budget, and that is passing a bill that's going to provide funding for the government, all that's required is a simple majority. So when it comes to bills having to do with setting the budget, the Senate functions pretty much just like the House does. The majority can work its will. But any bill that falls outside of budget bills funding the government requires 60 votes. So any bills that call for big policy changes require 60 votes. When the Affordable Care Act was passed, that they needed 60 votes to get it passed because it wasn't a budget bill. It was a whole big change in policy. As a matter of fact, there's a story about the Affordable Care Act, what people call Obamacare. When the Democrats first started to pass that bill, they actually had 60 Democrats in the Senate. They had a filibuster-proof majority. And while the bill was being debated and negotiated, and the Democrats were disagreeing with one another because that's what Democrats do, but they were disagreeing with one another and negotiating. But once they came up with a bill that everybody was happy with, they were going to be able to pass it. And even if the Republicans hated it, there were only 40 Republicans. And so the Democrats could file a closure petition and end debate. But halfway through the process, a Democratic senator from Massachusetts, Ted Kennedy, died. And as a result, now there were only 59 Democrats and 40 Republicans, none of whom supported the Affordable Care Act. Well, hopefully you realize that the difference between 60 senators and 59 senators is huge in the Senate, because now they couldn't invoke cloture any longer. Well, the way it worked in Massachusetts is if a senator resigned or retired or died, in the next election, they would vote for the new senator. Well, the legislature in Massachusetts actually voted to change the law and to give the governor the power to appoint somebody. Like right in the middle of everything, they just changed the law. And they gave the governor the ability to appoint somebody to replace Ted Kennedy, which he did, which then gave the Democrats 60 votes. And so they could then push through the Affordable Care Act. And then partway through, there was an election in Massachusetts, and the person who won was a Republican, And so once he took office in January, the Democrats were going to have to be back down to 59 senators again. And so they rammed through the Affordable Care Act before that change took place. Now, most people had no idea what was going on because most people have no idea about Senate rules or invoking closure or the filibuster or anything like that. But for political scientists, this was like the Super Bowl. Watching this was like so fun because all these things are happening. In any case, this is what gets me excited. Okay? Anyways, I hope you've learned a lot about Congress. And in the next set of lecture videos, we'll be moving on to how a bill becomes a law. And a lot of it's going to duplicate some of the things we've talked about here, but I hope you enjoyed this. One last thing. I know all this material is kind of complicated, so if you have any questions about this, if you need me to clarify anything, post questions on the discussion board, and I'll try and clarify. I know this is sometimes complicated, and I know I kind of get excited talking about Senate rules, which is my own personal problem. But don't forget that you can always post questions on the discussion board, and oftentimes that helps me out because it tells me if I did a good job or a not so good job. Okay, and keep in mind that my general policy is, and the way I generally look at things, is if I explained it and you didn't understand it, it probably means that I didn't do a very good job. So if you ask questions, oftentimes it helps me do a better job. Okay? Take care. And the next set of videos, as I said before, will be on how a bill becomes a law.